Hello, it's Pete here. Welcome. Today, very excited. We've got some of the makes that Tim Holtz Making Team have made for Halloween. I love to get them in my hands and try to figure out exactly what techniques are going on, because there is so much going on. It's unbelievable. The levels of creativity are off the charts. So let's take a look. Right, well, good place to start, the work of the wonderful Juliana Michaels. Now you can see here, Juliana's used this wonderful set, Halloween Night. There are 3 different silhouettes, but there's also the mini silhouette with the 3 joined together as well. She's got that lovely embossing folder in the background that is cracked, a 3D embossing folder, and you can see she's used a sort of a gloss that is so subtle, the colors in the background, but they just scream Halloween. And of course, the lovely moonlight, which will appear not only in the Halloween makes, but I would imagine in a lot of Christmas makes going forward. So 3 gorgeous tags there. And then next up, we've got this really cool bunting. And I'm going to try and lay this out without wrecking it. Oh my word, look at that. We've got Edison, that really cute pumpkin character, and you can see she used some of the dies from older sets as well. The bowler hats, I can't remember the name of the collection, but go back and have a look. I think it's chapter 1, so it'll be the beginning of 2023. I love this embossing folder. This embossing folder, I think a lot of the makers picked up on this one. It's called Tapestry. And because it's a multi-level, there are so many ways you can use this. We'll discuss the difference between multi-levels, 2Ds and 3Ds a little later, but there's such a brave, bold use of color with that lovely monochrome in the background. That is absolutely fabulous. Now, this next piece is by Keisha Charles. I love the drama of the color in the background, from dark to light there. Just a little bit of green coming in there. It's just, again, it's Halloween all over. But she's just stayed with plain color for the silhouettes themselves. And just by offsetting it, die cutting it from black and orange and slightly offsetting it, you get a sense that it's lit maybe by a bonfire or something from this end. And you know what? Never underestimate the power of wobbly eyes or googly eyes, whatever you choose to call them. But the colors here, oh my word, so bright, so intense. But just seeing it from left to right like that, and that lovely highlight. And then when we look on the back, just kindly put a name on there, again, there's that tapestry embossing folder. And it's, I think Keisha's probably used luster wax of some description here to pick up the detail, but that is truly fantastic. Really cool. Well, talking about bold use of color, Jenn Shurkus. And again, the googly eyes, yay, we love them. A lot of people said with this background, they could see eyes peeping out, so she's took it to the next level. And just being brave enough to use that gorgeous glitter card. That's stunning. It really is. That green, that purple, again, none more Halloween. Really cool. This one, again, Edison and some of the older pumpkins as well. It's lovely oranges, these gorgeous colors. In the background, I see there's some sort of crackle medium there. I have no idea. And that's what I love about these. It's to think how did they get to that point? What technique? So that's why I love getting hold of these makes and trying to discern exactly what was going through the maker's mind and the techniques that they use. But again, the repetition of the glitter card with the trick or treat phrase and on the inside of Edison. That's absolutely glorious. Really brave use of color. Fantastic. Yeah, really is. Well done, Jenn. Perfect. Now let's look at some work by Luise Heinzl. How about that for a showstopper make? And it's actually a couple of books joined together. Wonderful use if you've got some old books or books that are about to be thrown out, or you find something in a skip, just relove them. And the way that she's torn into the pages, some of the techniques on here, some of the different mediums, I don't even know where to start. But there's a lot going on here. We've got the moons from Moonlight in the background, the bats from Moonlight, and there are some of the centers from the Artsy leaves dye going on there. And this here, you'll notice, is the texture comes from the cracked embossing folder. That's just so cool. I'd love to have time to spend doing something like this, but you know, the techniques on display here are just off the charts, and I love the colors around the edge, that really subtle. It's probably, I know when a maker makes something like this, they do it with such gay abandon, you know, and confidence to make these marks and these splatters. If you spend too much time on it, it doesn't come across as authentic, but this really is. That's a wonderful make. I love that. Let's have a look at some cards by the same maker, and of course Luise Heinzl. Now, again, it's cropping up again, that tapestry. And when I saw the artwork for that, it wasn't my favorite. But when I started using it, it started to give up its secrets. But you can see here, again, the centers from the Artsy leaves, which is a set that I absolutely adore. So she's used just the centers, not the leaves, and used them to create these very subtle pattern backgrounds. They almost look like an embossing folder in themselves, but that's what happens when you get a really accomplished maker going to town with these. Now, the last one I absolutely love. This is also from Luise. The amount of techniques used to get the different textures all with the same embossing folder, which again is the tapestry. You can see the stitching around the edges. I love the way that she's created this. Well, it's almost a tapestry in itself, isn't it? But I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, I wonder what she's used. You know, she's very kindly, thank you, Luise, she's very kindly written on the back. So black watercolor paper and craft stock, embossed and different mediums on each square, frosted crystal, texture paste, translucent, clear embossing powder, and collage medium crazing, full stop, crazing, oxide ink, brush corduroy, and frayed burlap. Outer frame, tarnished brass paint. So there you have it. That's it. But even knowing that, you're still looking at it thinking, I wonder how she got this effect. Absolutely fabulous. Really love that. Now the last maker I want to look at is Cathie Cowles. This is gorgeous, and again, it's the absolute best use of both the Moonlight set, or one of the moons. Remember, there are two different sizes of moons, of which this is the smaller one, and we've got the Halloween night silhouettes with the bats coming off the edge there. And let's not forget our big frights. Really popular die set, this one that I particularly love. But again, bold and imaginative use of color all over there. I can't say enough about this. And do you know what? I'm not sure what cardstock, but it's so deep, it's so matte, it almost doesn't give off any reflection. That is stunning against those colors. Next up, this is another showstopper, and the body here is actually a couple of years ago. I think that was the Count, so it was Count Dracula, but of course she's used Edison's head, and we can see, if I move this about, you can see it in the light. There's it's obviously metallic cardstock, but using alcohol inks on the top, and of course the graveyard set, this wonderful graveyard set, which looks so 3D when you put it together, is unbelievable. But you know what? There's one more little surprise here, and that is there's lights on the back. How about that? How about that? I'm going to show this to James over there. You go, James. That's it. Oh, hang on. James is going to turn the lights down for me. Wow. There you go. Spooky. I almost wish I had a really good evil laugh. I don't want to scare people off. That is really something else. Let's see what it's like without the lights, and then suddenly, boom. That is fantastic. And it's the light that it lights up the background as well. So really smart use of light. I love that. Well done, Cathie. That's gorgeous. That really is. Now, next up from Cathie, I want to look at some, well, I think, relatively simple in comparison to that last one anyway. Some gorgeous colours, and she's gone through the seasons, and we're using Artsy leaves. So here you can see that embossing folder in the background. I think that might be chapter 1 as well. Can't remember the name off the top of my head, forgive me for which. But she's gone through the seasons. So this one says spring note, then we have summer again. So it's the same thing, but just by changing up those colours. It's staggering. Then autumn. How about that? And finally, winter. And I think if you challenged everybody, if you asked them which season these were trying to convey, it's quite obvious, particularly that winter one, those gorgeous blues and greens. And you can almost, I mean, if you're even halfway conversant with distress inks, you could probably take a good stab at which inks we used. But wow, really cool. Now, the Artsy leaves, this is appearing more and more. So I think for my make, I'm going to use these Artsy leaves. But of course, I want it to sit alongside an embossing folder. And that's always a challenge, to get lots of texture and lots of form and lots of color and try to get it to balance. And this is something that Cathie has done so well. And this one by Luise Heinzl earlier, remember this with the lovely tapestry background? I want to try and combine the best of those two. Now, if you want to see the work of Tim's Makers all in its glory, go to Tim's Sizzix Halloween video and you will see all of these and more besides. And he will also explain some of the different products, some of the Sizzix products that came out for this wonderful Halloween collection. So let's get on with making. So here we are, this is where it all starts. It's Artsy leaves and the tapestry embossing folder. Now Artsy leaves, as you can see, I think there are 18 different dies, so there are 9 of the centers and 9 of the leaves themselves. Now, are they leaves or are they pine trees? Is it foliage? It's artsy, that's the thing. It could be anything you want. You can use whatever techniques you like. You can die cut them and then emboss them. You can use them with or without the centers. You can use the centers by themselves. So very versatile set. Very contemporary as well. And of course the tapestry folder, we're going to be looking at that in a little second, but we want to do, I'm kind of going for an autumnal feel on this make, because the weather here is just starting to turn autumnal. The leaves are changing now, so let's see what we can do with this. Right, we can't do any inking without my wonderful Sizzix media mat, so I'm going to put that down there. And you can see that I've inked a panel of white card. And if you're wondering what I used, well, it's wilted violet. Then we've got pine needles, crushed olive, one of my old favorites, that one. Candied apple, rusty hinge just in the center here. Goes wonderful with the oranges. And finally, very Halloween, carved pumpkin. But of course, this isn't about Halloween, this is about fall, autumn, call it what you will. Now, I've got it to this stage. You can see it's somewhat imperfect, but that's fine. The one thing you'll notice as well is the intensity of the color. There is a lot of ink in there. It's not very subtle at all. Now, I want to change that up slightly. And to do that, I'm going to take my squeezed lemonade and I'm going to apply it to my craft mat. Like so. And that's what I love about this Sizzix craft mat, is the fact that it's white, so you can see the colors, you can see the intensity of the color. So, you know, whereas with a brown one or a darker one, you can't always get that. I'm going to spritz that with Tim's this Distress Sprayer Vaporissateur. Oh, right, okay. Vaporissateur. Good Lord. Do you know what? I hadn't noticed that. I hadn't noticed that before, but there you go. That's what it is. Now, let's move this about now. That's what I want to do. I want to kind of break that up, spread it out a little. Because I want to take this and pop it down like that. I want to pick some up. You can see the colors going down as well at the same time. Because this is what I want to happen. I want that water now to go into those colors, and I want them to change the whole look of that card. So you can put it like that, you can spritz it, you can splatter it, you can even take well, this is something I saw a friend of mine did recently. Spritzed on his hand and then went like that, and it makes the most. Now what I used to do is I used to flick things like that. You can just spray. You can use all of these techniques. It doesn't really matter. There are no hard and fast rules, but that will give you a really super interesting surface to work with, rather than just inking and leaving it, or just spritzing it lightly. So there's a lot going on there, and when that dries, that's going to be spectacular. So there we are. We were talking about drama before, and it's the water that's caused the drama. It's sort of a psychedelic constellation. But here's one that I made earlier. We've die cut our shapes, and when you start to put them alongside each other, and you also notice around the edges, I brought in my old friend, and I do mean an old friend, walnut stain. So I've actually inked just around those edges, because it helps give them contrast when you put them, particularly we were talking about pattern, texture, color. It really helps to let them stand out against other backgrounds. And if I just put this alongside, say there, for example, that inking on the outside just gives you the contrast needed. So there we are. Now, what I also did is I used some dried marigold and squeezed lemonade and die cut all of the centers. I'm going to choose a couple of these now. I'm just going to stick them down. There's no plan here, and that can be really cool sometimes. I'm going to take some of these wonderful centers, and I'm going to pop that into the glue, into the PVA, like that, and stick some of them down. Take that one there. Works rather well. No idea which one I'm going to use at the end, and that's part of the fun of it. It's part of the creative journey, if you like. Very often I will start off, particularly with a new set like this, I will start off not knowing where I'm going to end up. I just make stuff, and then it kind of takes on a life of its own, if I'm completely truthful. There we are. So we'll just pop a couple more down. Oh, this one I love, this lovely leaf center. Let's get a bit more glue, shall we? It's another great thing about having a medium mat, whether you're using acrylics, distress inks, distress oxides, any kind of medium, you can just take this when you're done and you can wash it off. It's so cute. We'll pop that one on there. Couple more to finish. Yes, definitely. So you see, it's best to start off without a plan and letting things fit as and when the need arises. Let's get this one. I'm going to leave that purple one. It's going to live to fight another day. I've got a plan for this one afterwards, actually, but there we are. There's one more. So really cool. And if you think about it, just from that cardstock and that cardstock, we've now got all these lovely autumnal leaves. And I do like to throw a little bit of purple in there as well. It just seems to, just does the trick for me. So that's our leaves done. Let's crack on with the embossing. Okay, we've got tapestry. It's a really cool folder. It's actually a multi-level folder. So it's not a 3D in the traditional sense. And to explain exactly what I'm talking about, is something that I did earlier on my computer, and it shows you the differences. Now remember the old embossing folders, the clear ones, the 2D. That's how they go, just on 2 levels, upper level, lower level. That's a 2D embossing folder. In 3D, we can see it can be flat, but it can have dips and troughs. It can be rounded, a lot more detail in a 3D. Then multi-level folder. Now this is almost like a cityscape. So you've got a base level, you've got a middle level, and you've got a top level. Because we've got those 3 levels, we can do some techniques that you can't do with these, or you can't do with those. That's why I love the multi-levels. They are really cool, and we'll show you why in a second. Now, if we take this tapestry folder, I want to show you some things that I've done using the technique I'm about to show you. That's obviously on white card, but we've got a 2-tone finish, and I'm using distress oxides for these as well. Now these are all on black card, and you can see the back there. I've actually applied some grey paint to the black card. That's such a subtle finish, that one. Again, and it was all different types of, and sometimes for the darker color, I will have used something other than archival ink, or something other than distress oxides as well. So it's about playing around with them, mixing, matching, and see where you get to at the end of the day. I'm going to try and recreate something like this now. So let's grab my oxide. Oh, here's a couple that I actually did, and put them in little frames. These are Tim Holtz wooden frames. Just make a wonderful background. So I'm going to bring in rusty hinge and salvaged patina. This is a newer one, but it's become a classic. Rusty hinge has always been a big favorite of mine. And you can see I'm using my, this is from the mixed media toolkit, and it's a multi-tool. So these heads snap on and off. I don't normally use them one either side, but I am today. So in fact, I could take that off and leave it to one side if I wish. Now, with this folder, what I'm going to do is use my brayer to apply the ink. Now, there's nothing to stop you applying the ink direct to the folder. It's just with the brayer, I find I get a much more even distribution of ink. So you'll see it's not perfect, and we don't want it to be perfect, not for what we're trying to achieve today, because the effect is going to be really subtle. There we are. So make sure that's loaded up, plenty of ink. And I'm also taking a piece of black card. Now, when I'm using a 3D embossing folder, I always spritz with a little water. It softens the card, it softens the fibers, allows them to stretch, gives me a much deeper emboss and a much more clearly defined emboss as well. Now, what I can also do is spritz onto that like so. That will help distribute some of that ink. So I'm going to close this up. I don't want it to move around too much, okay? So I'm going to hold that closed like that. And then I'll bring in my Big Shot machine. Of course, you can use any of the Sizzix machines, but the most important thing is that you use it on the bottom of the platform. So you take out the wafer thin die adapter and use one single cutting pad. And I'm just going to run this through once. It's a 3D folder. We do say sometimes twice, 3 times perhaps, but once will be fine for this because I'm doing the ink transfer technique. And you can see I'm taking it through relatively slowly as well. Let's take that out and see what we've got. So you see that where that ink is in between there. It's not a dramatic effect. Like when we looked at the distress inks for the leaves before, it's not dramatic. It's quite subtle, that is. So with this, I can simply, because it's a water-based ink, I just run that under the tap and it comes out perfectly clean. But let's take away my platform, because I want to just clean up my brayer. So take some of that ink off. You could apply this to card if you don't want to waste that ink. That's absolutely fine as well. There we are. Clean that away from my mat. Now we're going to come in with salvage patina, and this is where the drama really comes in, because I'm going to load this up and run that over the top like that. So see how it's kind of broken up? It's kind of imperfect. That's exactly what you want, because that's the beauty of these folders. It looks like an old, remember this was from the Halloween collection, so you want it to look like an old tapestry, something that is hung in sunlight and faded and it's careworn and maybe a little bit moth-eaten. Doesn't really matter, but what a stunning effect. Now the last thing I want to do before we go any further, let's just clean off my brayer with a wipe, and finally paper towel, whatever you need. You can run this over a piece of scrap paper if you want to get most of the ink off beforehand. So that's salvage patina and rusty hinge. The last thing I want to do is bring in, that's very uncharacteristic of me to clean up as I go along. So let's take the head off there and I'll reapply my brayer. Now let's take some, so this is like a kind of a cream acrylic, and I just need a little bit by there. Spritz that to water it down slightly, because again, we're going for that full kind of careworn Halloween-y type vibe. So let's flick some little bits of paint over there. And again, it adds to the drama. There we are. If I take more off, and it will give me smaller splatters. The more I load up with, the bigger the splatters are going to be. But that's just about where I want that now. So just wipe off that excess. And it's time to put all of these elements together. We're going to make a little card today. So we've pre-stamped this card, all Tim Holtz stamps, of course. I'm going to take my background, and I'm going to cut this up into strips. Again, at this point, I have a general idea what I'm going to do, but certainly not exact. So it doesn't really matter if the cutting is imperfect. It doesn't matter if they're slightly narrower at one end or thicker, or that's not important for what we want to achieve today. So we have those 3 strips. I think the first one, so I'm going to put this slightly offset like that. Then the second one, I'll trim that one down to size. There we are. So just cut it away. Bring that in there. And finally, yeah, I like the balance of that. Again, it is kind of making it up as I go along, but I sort of had a general idea as well. Now, that's a lovely pattern, but this is where those gorgeous leaves come into their own, showing that contrast. Remember I said when we put the ink around the outside of this, that's really paid dividends now. It's given us the contrast against the white card, but also lifted it above that lovely background. So this will live to fight another day. Now, of course, this folder was just one of 3 that was in the collection. We have this one, which is cracked I love that one. That's absolutely gorgeous. There's the cracked again, so a different technique, very similar kind of make. Artsy leaves, 3D embossing folders, a match made in heaven. I'm sure you'll agree. Really, really cool. So I'm just really pleased with those. I'm really pleased with the simplicity. There's a lot of technique going on there, but it's the simplicity of the final makes that I particularly enjoy. So a big, big thank you to all of Tim's makers who sent in the projects. It is inspirational. It's wonderful to see another person's take on something which you become so familiar with. But then you see what somebody else does with it, and it's like, boom, it's incredible. Some wonderful techniques on display there, and that's what inspired me to create this little series of mini cards, so thank you so much for that. Of course, if you want to see it in more depth, if you want to see Tim talking about it, then go to timholtz.com, go to his website. He goes through all of the products and all of the separate makes. Also, you will find more Tim Holtz content on the Tim Holtz Hub on the Sizzix website as well, and all the usual places like Facebook, Instagram, and so on and so forth. You know where to look. Thank you for joining me today. I've had a lot of fun, and I'll see you again soon.